but that's an introduction to the book of Joel from the Bible translation, New King James, put out by a group that call it the Revival Bible, and it's got these notes in it. Now, I don't want people to be turned off to the idea of revival. That's the first thing I want to address. I think it's really good that Q and others are using the term awakening. In times past, that's almost been synonymous, the idea being that revivals could lead to an awakening. An awakening would be the community at large, or the nation at large even. And that's what historically awakenings have been. And in America, we've had two great awakenings. Some would say there's been a third, but some would say that what we're on the verge of is the third. So at any rate, we are beginning a new awakening. And one of the things about awakenings is very much like a 99th monkey syndrome kind of thing, that everybody learns the truth, and there's an awakening in the sense that everybody sees things that they were always there that they never saw. And because it's not just one or two people or leaders that hold this knowledge, the movement itself has power, and we're very much seeing that. And that is what is prefigured in the book of Joel. And Joel's army has always been somewhat mysterious to me, because even reading it as a young Christian in the book of Joel, you don't quite know, is the army good or is the army bad? And because they're referred to as being terrible, and it's almost as if they're breaking down stuff. There's the Locust army, and then the army of the people that come after the Locusts that are kind of as a response to it. And I'll read this third paragraph there. Joel's Locust army is a metaphor for the single-minded unity by which those whom God uses to get the nation's undivided attention. Joel sees in this divine judgment a picture of the day of the Lord, a term for the coming visitation of God. His description of the way this army operates provides insight to the way a spiritual army operates during such a day of visitation. The power of the locust is primarily the way they move and commence their attack. Proverbs 30:27. Without a king, they go forth by their bands. This is, in the insect world, the phenomenon of gregariousness. A group of flocking creatures act as if they are all individual cells in a great overmind, where, without apparent direct leadership or direction, each behaves according to a purpose greater than the individual preference or decision. Locusts move in what the science of chaos theory might call a fractal manner. In other words, while not predictable, neither is their action random. So we see this in our current Great Awakening movement, and the whole idea of we go one, we go all. That is, and the saying, we're all Q now. That's even something that the Q team said. So there is this sense that the revival, awakening, and what's happening in America and around the world can't be stopped because censorship doesn't work. If you have one or two people that are the bottleneck or the leaders of a movement, in the past, the deep state has been able to silence people by finding key leaders and taking them, removing them either by assassination or by censorship. And they still try to do that. Obviously, they're still trying it with Alex Jones. It's not working. The information is already out. So that's what I see happening now. And the book of Joel, if you read it, you'll get, I believe, if you have the Holy Spirit working within you, if you've invited Christ, you will get inspiration about what's happening now from reading this book.
One of the things that strikes me, I believe in the enemy. I believe in Lucifer and his presence on this planet, and I believe that he is restricted, but he does have powers. And that he is all the time doing what exactly his mission is from day one. And that is that his intention is to destroy God's creatures. And that's us. He's to destroy humanity. That's his primary mission. And I believe he uses antichrists, not the Antichrist at this point. Who knows if the Antichrist is here right now? The Antichrist. But he uses many antichrists in order to do his will, in order to destroy us. And just as he may have through his demons and other methods have taken over, people speculate that people like Stalin or Hitler or Mao may have been overtaken by demons and caused the hundreds or tens of millions of deaths that they did, and that may be because of demonic possession. But even if that wasn't the case, I believe the enemy is here. I believe that he's able to attack. I believe he launches his minions against us and his demons. And I also believe that just as in Joel, it talks about how God has this army, and it talks about it for an army of judgment, divine judgment. I believe that Lucifer unleashes his army. You talk about Joel's locust army. What I see in play today is Satan's locust army. And if you think about the way that the left operates, their hive mentality, the way that they parrot each other, they seem to be operating almost like soulless creatures that would have come out of the sequel of Invasion of the Body Snatchers if they had done Invasion of the Soul Snatchers. That's what I see on the left today when they are free. They're cheering in the assembly within the state of New York for the creation of legislation that it would allow the termination, the murder of a child in the third trimester, and then what took place in Virginia, where you've got the governor of Virginia saying that even after the child is born, that they can still try to murder that child under certain circumstances. This is Lucifer or Satan's locust army, in my opinion, on the loose throughout the world today.
I agree with you, and this is one of the reasons why the book of Joel and this particular section has always been confusing to me, is because you kind of say, well, is the army good or is the army bad? Well, the locust army is destroying, and that's bad. But it's bringing judgment. God has allowed it because the people in that time had really become enemies of God, and that's what we see in a large part of the culture in America today. And a lot of that, of course, is attributed to subversive activities in the media that have allowed this evil to grow. So we have that locust army that is destroying, and then after that, there's the description in the book of Joel about an army that is of humans. And they act like the locust army, but they are actually taking out the bad leaders that have led to the entrance of the army of locusts, or the dark cabal. So what this all tells me, we on the right, or the conservatives or constitutionalists, we prize individual liberty, individual unity. So for that reason, it's difficult for us to come together to fight as one when we've got an enemy. Of course, America did it during World War II. We really, really saved the planet as coming together as Americans for individual liberty, for freedom, and we saved the world, Europe at least, from a dominating evil power that kind of was like locusts, that German Nazi forces, one way of thinking of it. And we can do it again, and it's happening. You have liberty-minded people waking up and moving together, and they follow this locust army, but their targets are not destruction. Their targets are the people that are responsible for the destruction.
And I think it's also interesting, some of the themes that were recurring, the lack of water causing the drought that causes the locust infestation, and just the importance of that resource, and the fact that it was a food supply crisis that was a central piece to this. But in the podcast we have going, the Polypsych, we're going to be looking at the movie Network, which looks at another archetype of the mad prophet. And the interesting thing about that movie, aside from just the obvious television commentary, is just the figure of Howard Beale being this populist, similar to the Old Testament archetype, and then he's killed in the end, very last scene of the movie. It's almost a commentary on populism itself, and it's interwoven with the original impulse of a lot of the Old Testament prophets were from the country and the countryside, and they would usually defend the rights of the people, the peasantry around the area that were cultivating crops and so on. But it ends, I think it was referred to, I'm just looking at an article on the internet here, Peter's first public speech at Pentecost was kind of the bookend. On the other side, the positive aspect is that we would then have a harvest, a grape harvest, and a wine making to describe, or to sort of cap off the return of the winter rains and the revitalization of the people, because the Lord dwells within them.
Yeah, and your young men will see visions and your old men will dream dreams. And I think, one message that's really paramount here is that there are people who intend evil, as DC was referring to. And, we have different phrases that we use, the cabal and different ones. But I think one of the most astute is to refer to them as the death cult, because that's really what they are. They practically worship death. And the Bible says the thief, referring to the devil, only comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And the only way that we can engage this kind of force, that kind of hatred and anger and destruction, is successfully anyway, is to be aligned with the holy God and with Creator, whatever people refer to him as, and be in God's army. So that's my takeaway here. Thank you very much for putting this together, DC, and for inviting.
Right. And then Arrow?
Yeah, I wanted to just read one sentence from the last very part of this, and it's on a second screenshot of the intro to the Book of Joel from a Bible. An awakening is a divine attack on society. When God is so grieved at being misrepresented by people who claim to know him that he intervenes in a militant manner to correct false impressions, where he, quote, puts on righteousness for a breastplate, end quote, and the Son of God goes to war. Multitudes are in the valley, and afterward the rain comes, the rain being the blessing.
Amen.
Thank you, DC.
Hey, and then Bandit?
Yeah, I never got to address Arrow's thing here. I'm going to tell you that probably out of all of you, I am the least book religious person among you. And when I first in politics, when I got out of the Marine Corps in '94, I was just a conscientious conservative. I just, what common sense conservative. I just thought, man, there's a lot of things that are wrong, that are just weird, that are just, why are people going this way and everything else. And in the last couple of years, and joining a group like yours and seeing what I've seen, talking about what we've talked about, it's more than just politics. I have seen it is a battle of good versus evil. And I have feelings at times that I cannot explain that is more than just logic. It is emotional. It is through me. And I firmly believe that we are on the right side of things and that we will win. There's times when I'm scared. Don't get me wrong. There's times when I'm scared about this or that, and they're going to win at this battle or whatever. No, we're going to win overall. And it is a godly thing. It is preordained. I don't know how to say it. I really don't. I'm not as religious as you guys, but I feel it. And I am so glad to be a part of this group and so glad to be alive at this time.
President Trump always looks like he's going to lose just before he wins, but in the end, God always wins. Troll Whisperer, any final thoughts?
It ties it all together, and appreciate the opportunity to be with everyone again as we move ahead.
And so I want to thank Abigail, Arrow, Bandit, and Troll Whisperer for participation in the recording today. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and God bless. And now the DC Hammer Show is available as an audio podcast. Just go to Podcast Garden or iTunes and search for DC Hammer or News Narrative Analysis Associates, NNAA.